Hey there everybody, and welcome to my review of the new Seat Arona. Now, there was a time that you could only afford an SUV if you were very well off, and that way you could lord it over us mere mortals. However, with SUVs and crossovers being the fastest growing segment in the automotive market, there's pretty much an SUV for everyone, and you don't have to pay more than just a regular hatchback, which is why I've got the Arona next to me. It's based on the new Seat Ibiza, and it's just for a little bit extra money you can get yourself a little bit of extra ground clearance. So I've had the new Seat Arona for a week, and I'm going to let you know what it's like. So I will say, when it comes to styling, Seat have done a pretty good job with the Arona. Again, it is based on the Ibiza hatchback, and that's not exactly an ugly car to look at. This SE technology comes with things as standard, such as 17-inch alloy wheels, rear LED lights, and also a contrasting two-tone paint job, so you've got the white and the contrasting grey roof. So it's actually a very handsome car, but if you do want something a little bit more sporty, you can go for the FR version, which gives you more attractive alloy wheels, full LED headlamps, but again, that will come at an extra cost. So, sat in the Arona, and the first thing you notice is how high you sit compared to the Ibiza hatchback. Now, that is particularly helpful if you have any kind of mobility issues with your legs or your back, so that way you're not having to bend down to get into the hatchback version, but you can more just kind of slide in. Once you're sat in your driving seat, you've got plenty of adjustment in the seats, and also with the steering wheel with both rake and reach adjustment. I will say, in typical VW Group fashion, the dashboard layout is functional, if not entirely exciting. And I will say, just like the Ibiza hatchback, there is a lot of hard touch plastics in here, but they don't feel of a poor quality. I do like that you have got this kind of metal effect across the dashboard just to kind of lighten things up, and even with the lighter headlining, it does feel light and airy in here. Visibility is also incredibly good. You've got relatively thin A pillars, and also the C pillar isn't too thick, but you've got a couple of additional windows back there to aid with visibility. And even the rear visibility out of the rear window is very good, considering this is classed as a kind of small SUV. Something I'm very impressed with the spec of this SE technology is that just in front of the gear stick, you've got yourself a little cubby area for your phone, and it will hold an iPhone 7 Plus. Granted, it hasn't got wireless charging, but that is something you get as standard on there, and that's a huge surprise on a car like this. You also get 2 USB charging ports, and that's an extra good thing, because it does mean you can connect up to this wonderful 8-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I will say this touchscreen is definitely a cut above the rest of the competition, particularly from the likes of Hyundai and Kia. The graphics are just a lot nicer to look at, and it's so much easier to use even when you're on the move. However, there are a couple of rivals coming, and we'll get to those in a little bit, that will have a very similar system in place. The only major negatives I have about the interior of the SE technology is the fact of, and I found this out earlier in the week as it is January and it has been quite frosty, is I actually haven't got any heated wing mirrors, and that was a bit of a surprise. And the other thing I will say is I would love to have had an armrest here. You kind of feel as though you want to rest your arm somewhere, but you do have a few cubby spaces. You've got a couple of cup holders here, a little tray in order to put any kind of loose change in there, and there's also a little tray for those that sat in the back. But all in all, this is a really nice, comfortable place to be, and I was genuinely impressed by it. But that's the front seat of the Seat Arona. Let's have a sit down in the back and see what it's like there. So, sat in the back of the Arona, it's actually really good back here. That driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a decent amount of knee room and headroom. I actually think you could get a couple of 6-footers back here, providing that they're not 6-footers in the driver or passenger seat. And anyone of my size, I would suggest you kind of class this as a 4-seater, not a 5-seater, as anyone sat in that middle seat is going to take a hammering from my shoulder. In that respect, it does feel more like a hatchback in size. Also, as a huge positive, it's very light and airy back here, thanks to the light headlining, big windows, and also that extra window in the C pillar. You could definitely do a long journey in this car and come out the other end feeling lovely and comfortable, and not feeling that you've been kind of cramped in something like a small hatchback. There are a few useful features as well. You've got ISOFIX points on the outer seats. You've got these lovely little clips to hold the seatbelt in if you need to get the seats down, and you've got some sizable door bins. And I will mention as well, because I forgot to mention it at the front, you do get some bloody huge door bins in the front doors, and they will definitely hold large bottles of water in there. So yeah, it's a very practical car. And now let's go have a little look at the boot before we go for a drive. So opening the boot of the Arona presents you with 400 litres of space, and it's a nice square loading area. I am genuinely impressed by it. You also get a nearly flat load lip, and also if you put the rear seats down you get an almost completely flat loading area. I was genuinely again impressed by this. You do get some nice added features as well. You got some tethering hooks and a lot of underfloor storage, although if you do go for the spec upwards you can get yourself a spare wheel. I will say though, something I thought they had forgotten about but actually they hadn't, is when you need to put the parcel shelf under the floor, you can do so, although I will mention you do need to move this little bit of trim first. And as you can see, you can easily load the parcel shelf away, still giving you that 400 litres of usable space. So I have to say, well done Seat, this is actually a well thought out car. So that's the practicality side done, let's go for a drive. So this SE technology is powered by a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine producing 95 brake horsepower and is mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox. You can get a more powerful 115 brake horsepower version, and that's mated to a 7-speed DSG. There is a diesel version available, and that's a 1.6 litre diesel producing 95 brake horsepower and is again mated to a 5-speed manual. I will say I was a little bit apprehensive about this SE technology with a 95 brake horsepower, because I did think that the car might feel a little bit underpowered. Well, we shall see. So the first thing you notice when you're driving away is actually how quiet the engine is. Considering it's a little 3-cylinder, at low speeds this is absolutely lovely. The gear shift, even again I'm at slow speed, is actually very nice and precise, and it's got the tiniest bit of notch to it, but I will say you find your gears very easily in this car. It's not disappointing at all. But now, speaking of that performance, let's have a little look, shall we? So you do get a bit of a 3-cylinder thrum. But I will be honest, that is a huge surprise. This is a very nice engine to drive in. So as I said, it's got 95 brake horsepower. It's a little turbo in that 1 litre unit, and it is genuinely a very good engine. I actually thought this would feel a bit underpowered. 0 to 60 times around 11 seconds or so. So if we push the engine a little bit, you do get a bit of a 3-cylinder thrum coming through into the cabin, but it's not really that intrusive. The sound insulation in this car is actually very good. The other surprise is the suspension and the dampening on this car is again absolutely excellent. I was expecting this to be quite crashy, but it's not. It deals with bumps and imperfections really well. You can hear some of them resonate into the cabin, but in terms of actually feeling them, well, you hardly do so. So driving the Arona at motorway speeds, again, I am really pleasantly surprised. There's a tiny, and I do mean a tiny bit of wind noise coming off the wing mirrors. There's a little bit of road noise, but other than that, it's actually very refined in here. It's surprisingly refined, in fact. Considering that something like a Mazda CX-3, which is a lot more expensive, actually has a little bit more tyre noise coming into the cabin. I will say though, as well, with the cabin, it's actually really nice and pleasantly laid out, and it is very functional. This 8-inch touchscreen is a joy to use and is actually very easy to use whilst on the move. Again, using the Mazda though, it might not be as intuitive as that car, because the Mazda comes with a BMW style iDrive system as well as being a touchscreen. But I will say, for the most part, it's probably the best looking system on all the cars in this class. It does beat the likes of the Kia Stonic and the Hyundai Kona in terms of practicality, and I gotta say in terms of drive as well. So visibility in the Arona is actually really good. As mentioned, you got those relatively thin A pillars and you got those additional windows in the C pillars to aid with visibility in your blind spot. Rear visibility is also very good in a car of this class, and if I had one little niggle, but this is more of a personal opinion, I would like the wing mirrors to be a little bit bigger, but I have a feeling as a consequence you'd end up having a bit more wind noise intruding into the cabin. So as they are, they still do a very good job. But I have to say, I am thoroughly impressed with the visibility of the Arona. Ride comfort in the Arona is actually a very strong point to this car. Because it is a raised version of the Ibiza, it doesn't feel as crashy at slow speeds, although you can feel some of the bumps and imperfections resonate into the cabin, but for the most part it deals with them very well. The steering as well is absolutely brilliant. It's nice and light, but at the same time there's a good amount of feedback to it, and you can chuck it into corners with a bit of confidence. However, it's not quite as fun as the Ibiza hatchback because of that raised ride height, but it's still a joy to use. And I will say, when it comes to parking, because of that lightness, it is absolutely easy to park that car, coupled with the great visibility that the Arona provides. So I did have a few apprehensions about having this 1 litre 3-cylinder TSI with a 95 brake horsepower, but I have to say it is an absolute peach of an engine. If you do a lot of town driving and short trips, this is a perfect engine for you. That kind of 0 to 30 time, getting away from the traffic lights, getting away from roundabouts, it really does respond well, and having actually a very good 5-speed manual does aid in that driving experience. If you do a lot more kind of motorway miles as such on a regular basis, then you might want to look at the more powerful 115 version, or go spec up to the diesel or even the 1.5 in a higher spec Arona. But I will say, as a kind of perfect all-round engine, this 1 litre 3-cylinder TSI is an absolute gem, and I do thoroughly recommend it. It has actually surprised me hugely just how fun and responsive it is. Yes, if you do put your foot down, you do get that 3-cylinder thrum kicking in, as I'll demonstrate now in a little acceleration. But those 3-cylinder thrums have actually been quite characterful, and I don't mind it. Kind of makes it feel like a bit throaty. Okay, granted it hasn't got the performance to match, but it is a perfect all-rounder with that noise. But if you just drive along in a nice relaxed fashion, it's actually not at all noisy, and it is very, very relaxing indeed to drive. So the Arona is the latest in a wave of small SUVs coming over to the UK, but it has gone against some established rivals. The Renault Kaptur has done very well in the UK, as has the Nissan Juke, but the Nissan Juke now feels very dated in this class. We've got the upmarket feeling Mazda CX-3 with that excellent infotainment system and plush interior. However, you do have to pay for it. And from Korea, we've got the highly commendable Hyundai Kona and also the Kia Stonic. But I will mention that the Kona's got an added string to its bow in the fact that you can get a fully electric version. But that again does mean you have to dig quite deep in your wallet. Personally, the biggest rivals to the Arona have not yet been released, and they are coming from in-group. So firstly, there is the highly anticipated Volkswagen T-Cross, and like its bigger car, the T-Roc, it is being pushed as kind of a lifestyle vehicle, and the styling's very different to what we've seen from Volkswagen lately. And also, and this is the car that we now know a name of, but we don't actually know what it looks like yet, is the new Skoda Kamiq. And that again is going to be a very interesting car to look at, because that car is going to get its unveiling at the 2019 Geneva Motor Show, and it'll be very interesting to see how Skoda look to compete in this very competitive class. I will say Skoda at the moment are on a roll with cars such as the 7-seat SUV Kodiaq and the smaller Karoq. But yes, this is a very highly competitive segment to compete in, and it's very interesting to see how those two cars go against the Arona, particularly as this seems to have all its other rivals beaten. It's a brilliant car to drive. I'm loving the steering on it. It's light, it's precise, but there's, you know, a good amount of feel from there. The suspension, dealing with the bumps as well, it just feels nice and soft and just does everything as you would expect it to do. But it's been a huge surprise. However, the biggest surprise has to be that engine. That 1 litre TSI has just been an absolute peach, particularly as the kind of driving that I do means I don't need lots of power. I just need a little bit to get to and from work, so it's like a 10-mile round trip. It's actually a very punchy engine, and if you don't do any long miles, it's the perfect choice for you. And then that comes on to the next thing, which is the cost. This SE technology has got pretty much everything that you need. Okay, granted, there are a couple of negatives. I did mention about the heated wing mirrors, and also this car doesn't come with an alarm. You've actually got to go to a higher spec for that. So if you do go for an Arona and you go for an SE technology, make sure you park it in the garage. But other than those small niggles, this is actually a brilliant car to drive, and I've been thoroughly impressed by it, but also thoroughly surprised by it. I wasn't expecting this much performance from a little engine, and I wasn't expecting it to drive this good as well. This is personally an absolutely brilliant car to drive, and I gotta say, unless you kind of want to have that extra styling or you want all those extra bits of technology, well, this is probably the perfect car for you. And that leads me on to the final thing, this actual car that I'm driving. Have any of you recognised it at all? Because this is actually the poster boy car for the What Car of the Year 2019, where the Arona has won that honour of being the best small SUV. So yeah, I'm driving a little celebrity car, who'd have thought it? But guys, let me know what you think. Do you think I'm right about the Arona and how it drives and everything? Are you looking forward to these rivals from Volkswagen and Skoda, or do you like any of the other cars that I've already mentioned? Please put your comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. I'm losing me words, aren't I? Also, don't forget to hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I bring out a new video. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and again guys, if you want to see any kind of still photos or anything like that, go to those sites and check them out. But again, any comments, any questions, post them down below. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this video of the Seat Arona 1 litre TSI 95 brake horsepower SE technology. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'm going to catch you all guys in the next video. Take care and bye bye.